My dad chose my sister's housewarming over walking me down the aisle. It was a blow I didn't see coming, leaving me to rely on my grandparents for support on one of the most important days of my life. For as long as I can remember, it's always felt like my parents loved my oldest sister, Vicki, more than me. Vicki was the planned child, the one they'd been waiting for, while I was just a happy accident, arriving just 10 months later. I often wondered if they even wanted me, but they decided to keep me anyway. My mom's parents had passed away before I was born, so I never knew them, but my dad's parents were very much alive. They stepped in, playing a huge part in raising me. Grandma and Grandpa became the rock in my life, offering me the love and stability I felt were always lacking from my own parents. There were so many times, especially when I was younger, that my parents would take my sister on trips but leave me behind with my grandparents. At the time, I didn't mind. I loved being with them, and it was always fun. But as I started to get older, around 6 or 8 years old, it hit me just how unfair it was. It wasn't just my parents I had issues with. My relationship with Vicki was a constant source of tension too. While I never had any hard feelings toward her, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just an extra, unwanted member of the family. Vicki knew this, and she made me feel like a stranger in my own home every single day. It was like we were constantly in competition, competing for everything, grades, attention, even the tiniest of accomplishments. No matter what I did, she always seemed to come out on top, because my parents always preferred her. And I felt inferior because of it. One incident stands out. Vicki wanted to join a group of girls but felt too shy to approach them because she was, well, a bit nerdy. One of the girls and I had art class together, and she introduced me to the rest of the group. Before long, we were hanging out together. Vicki couldn't stand it. She was jealous that I was fitting in, so she made my parents talk to me about including her in the group. I didn't want to, but my mom called me selfish, and my dad insisted that, as her sister, I should look after her. Reluctantly, I agreed to bring Vicki into the fold. When she joined, things didn't go well. Vicki had trouble connecting with the girls, and her attempts to impress them often came across as intrusive. The tension was undeniable. One day, one of the girls had a crush on a guy, and Vicki, in an effort to help, went up to him and told him about the crush. He laughed, not interested in her at all, and made it known to everyone. It embarrassed the girl, and after that, the girls told me very firmly that they didn't want Vicki around anymore. I agreed. But that was when the drama started. Vicki wasn't going to let it go. She threw a tantrum, going straight to our parents and telling them that I shouldn't be hanging out with those mean girls either. She said that, as her sister, I should stand up for her. I refused. I told her it wasn't my fault that they didn't want to be her friends. But, as always, my parents sided with her. They lectured me about how Vicki had no bad intentions and that I should work to fix things. If the girls didn't forgive her, then I should cut them off too. I wasn't about to jeopardize my friendships for her. I told my parents that I had enough. I liked being with my friends, and unlike Vicki, I wasn't going to put that at risk. I told them it wasn't my responsibility to find friends for Vicki. My parents were furious. They gave me the silent treatment for weeks. But I'm glad I stuck to my guns. That group of girls is still my close-knit circle today. They're like my sisters. We've laughed, cried, and shared some of the most meaningful moments of my life. But, back then, it was hard to stand firm in my decision. There were moments when doubt crept in, times when I questioned whether I'd made the right choice in putting my own happiness first. But it wasn't just that incident that pushed Vicki further away. There was another situation that added fuel to the fire. Vicki had a crush on a guy, someone I had no interest in. We had some classes together and were friends, but I wasn't attracted to him. He asked me to junior prom, and I politely declined, since I already had plans with someone else I liked. When Vicki found out, she flipped. She cried and accused me of always taking things she wanted, of knowingly flirting with the guy for months. She called me horrible names no sister should ever say to another and told my parents she wished I wasn't her sister. My mom took her side, scolding me for not respecting the girl code. I tried explaining that I wasn't even interested in the guy and had declined his invitation, so Vicki could have asked him herself if she wanted. But she wouldn't let it go. I realized that she probably knew he would reject her, and in her frustration, she took it all out on me. One day, my dad took me out for ice cream. It was rare for him to want to spend time with me, so I was excited. But that excitement quickly turned into confusion when he started grilling me with questions. He asked if my boyfriend and I were being careful, if he came from a good family, and if we ever did drugs. I was taken aback. I asked him what he meant, and that's when he revealed that Vicki had been spreading rumors about me. She told them for months that I was doing drugs and drinking with my boyfriend. I was furious. I showed him my phone to prove that Vicki was lying. Later, when my dad confronted her, she tried to justify the lies, claiming that no one our age just hung out with a guy unless there were drugs involved. I lost it. I yelled at her, telling her it wasn't my fault that she had no one to date. She needed to stay out of my business. Vicki didn't take it well. Out of nowhere, she punched me. It was so unexpected, especially since she had never been physically violent before. I could feel the sting as my nose started bleeding. The sharp sting in my face was unbearable as I collapsed to the ground. My fingers pressed against the throbbing pain, my world spinning as my parents rushed me to the emergency room. In the back seat, clutching my face, they kept begging me, almost pleading, not to file a police report against Vicki. Don't ruin her life, they said, over and over again. But Vicki? She didn't even look back, not even a hint of remorse in her eyes. The nurse in the ER asked about what had happened. I told her everything, the truth, every painful detail, and she didn't hesitate. She called CPS. The moment they heard about it, my parents were furious. Furious that I had involved strangers in what they considered a family matter. To them, Vicki's actions were nothing more than an unfortunate accident. Just a slip-up. But I knew better. I had endured too much. They begged the authorities, arguing that Vicki was no threat to me. But despite their pleas, the authorities warned my parents. A warning to stay vigilant, that they would be keeping an eye on our family, ready to intervene if anything else happened. Vicki was shaken. So were my parents. The tension was palpable. Later, when they confronted me, their disappointment hit harder than any blow Vicki had ever delivered. You're trying to ruin your sister's life, my mother cried. She told me how I was tearing our family apart by involving outsiders, by daring to seek help. My father's voice cracked with disappointment as he asked, "Why escalate this?" I looked at them, the people who were supposed to protect me, and I said firmly, "I want Vicki out of my life." That decision, that choice, it felt final, and somehow, it felt right. My parents reluctantly agreed. The guilt gnawed at me, but it was overshadowed by the newfound sense of safety that I hadn't felt in so long. Vicki was officially warned. And from that day forward, she stopped speaking to me. No more hovering, no more attempts to worm her way into my life. And I was relieved. When my grandparents found out what had happened, they were quick to act. "Pack your things. Come live with us for the rest of high school," they said. My parents didn't even protest. They didn't argue. So, I packed my bags, and I left for their house, away from the tension, away from the fear. There, I felt safe. Loved. It was a stark contrast to the cold, indifferent atmosphere at home. The rest of high school was different. It was full of laughter, friends, and moments I hadn't thought I'd ever have. My parents never visited. They never called. I suppose they were too preoccupied with their perfect daughter, their beloved Vicki. But I never reached out either. They had discarded me so easily, like I didn't matter. And somehow, that hurt more than anything. When graduation day came, they were there, but not for me. They were there for Vicki. My mother didn't even congratulate me. She didn't even look at me. I was a stranger in my own family. But my grandparents, they had my back. They saw right through the blatant favoritism. They scolded my parents, and it felt good to have someone on my side for once. My grandfather must have said something to my dad because later, awkwardly, my father came up to me and congratulated me. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then came the news I had been waiting for. I had been accepted into a great college with a full scholarship. I was thrilled beyond words. The thought of not having to ask my parents for money was a relief I couldn't put into words. I shared the news with my grandparents, and they were over the moon. They took me out to a fancy restaurant to celebrate. My grandmother, with pride shining in her eyes, posted about me on Facebook, praising me for all I had accomplished. Our relatives saw the post, and soon the congratulations came pouring in. I guess some of them told my parents. They had no idea. But instead of sharing in my joy, my mother called, her voice heavy with anger. She told me that Vicki had locked herself in her room, crying because she hadn't gotten into any colleges yet. She said that I was making her feel worse, that I was intentionally rubbing my success in her face. And, unbelievably, she blamed me for Vicki's bad grades. According to my mother, I had somehow pushed her into failure. I couldn't believe it. It was the final blow. It was the last time I ever spoke to her for a long while. My grandparents helped me move into my college dorm. My high school boyfriend and I had broken up, the distance too much for us to overcome, and I entered college alone, ready for a new chapter. The breakup stung, but it didn't hold me back. I was determined to make the most of this new beginning. That's when I met Rob. We were both freshmen, both bookworms, and we spent hours in the library. Rob was different from anyone I'd ever met. He was quiet, focused, and kind in ways that were rare. As we spent more time together, I realized I was falling for him deeply. I wasn't shy about my feelings, I told him outright. To my surprise, he felt the same. Our relationship grew, and before long, we were inseparable. It's been 8 years now, and we're still going strong. Rob and my grandparents get along so well. They adore him, and he treats them like family. His parents? They've embraced me as one of their own. Rob's mother once confessed that she'd always wanted a daughter, and she's so glad to have me in their lives. For the first time, I feel like I truly belong. It's a feeling I never thought I'd experience. Throughout all of this, my parents remained distant. They only ever reached out on my birthday, and even that felt half-hearted. Then came the day Rob proposed. It was perfect. We were at our special spot, watching the sunrise. His nervousness was endearing, and I knew, without a doubt, that I wanted to spend my life with him. I posted the news on Instagram, and soon my grandparents were congratulating us. The word spread, and of course, my parents found out. Out of the blue, they called to congratulate me. It felt odd, like a stranger was trying to be involved in my life again. They asked about my job, my apartment, and then, suddenly, my dad asked if he could walk me down the aisle. I was stunned. Just moments ago, he didn't even know where I worked, and now he was asking for such a monumental role in my life? I hesitated. I haven't really thought about it, I told him. And then, the guilt trip came. He said it would be embarrassing if I didn't let him walk me down the aisle. People would ask questions. It was better if he did. But I wasn't sure anymore. Saw no need to try to convince them otherwise. I couldn't believe the audacity, the sheer disregard for everything that was supposed to matter. How could they prioritize her housewarming over my wedding? Their actions felt like a final, crushing blow to a relationship I had already been grieving for years. The anger surged inside me, but I knew it was pointless to argue further. I had fought for so long, pushing for a shred of recognition, a flicker of understanding from them, and I had received nothing. My father, with his cold, calculating tone, had just made it abundantly clear that I would always be second to Vicki. What was the point of pretending everything was normal? What was the point of clinging to some twisted idea of family when it was clear that loyalty had no place here? I felt utterly deflated, as if they had stripped away any remnants of hope I had left. Yet, there was a strange sense of relief too, a sense of liberation that came with finally severing the last thin ties that had kept me bound to this toxic cycle. As my father's words echoed in my mind, I found myself thinking about everything I had been through. All the years of betrayal, the constant emotional manipulation, the unspoken expectations that I should just forgive and forget. I had spent too many years allowing my own pain to be silenced, swept under the rug, just to maintain the illusion of peace. But now, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Not this time. I wasn't about to apologize for protecting my peace. I wasn't about to let them ruin one of the happiest days of my life just to make themselves feel better. My wedding was going to be about me and the people who actually cared for me, the ones who had supported me, understood me, and never once tried to undermine my worth. And that was more than enough for me. When I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but shake my head in disbelief. Vicki, of all people, was the one they were choosing to support. After everything, after the years of pain she had caused, they were still so willing to forgive her. But me? I was the one being made to feel like the villain. It was infuriating, but deep down, I knew it was time to stop chasing approval from people who would never see me for who I truly was. So I let go. Of the bitterness, the hope, the disappointment. I let it all go. My wedding was approaching fast, and I wasn't going to let my parents' decision to exclude themselves steal my joy. It was time to move forward, to build the life I had always dreamed of, one filled with love, support, and genuine happiness. And as for my parents? Well, I knew I would never get the closure I was looking for. But at least now, I could finally breathe without the weight of their expectations crushing me. I hung up the phone, trying to steady my breath. I had put on a brave face for my dad, but deep down, the pain of rejection cut deeper than any words could describe. When I shared the news with Rob, he was furious. He couldn't understand how my parents could be so insensitive, especially after they had insisted on being invited in the first place. In that moment, Rob reminded me of something crucial. Maybe I should ask Grandpa and Grandma. After all, they had been more present in my life than my own parents had been. I thought about it for a second, and then I agreed. With a heart full of emotion, I dialed my grandparents' number. The words felt thick in my throat as I spoke, the tears almost spilling over. "You and Grandpa have always been there for me," I said, my voice trembling. "You've been more than grandparents, you've been like parents. I can't imagine anyone else by my side on my wedding day." Without hesitation, my grandparents said yes. They spoke with such warmth, promising me they would never disappoint me. Unlike my parents, who had let me down time and time again, my grandparents were unwavering in their support. Hearing those words filled me with a peace I hadn't known in ages. In that moment, I realized that I had a family who loved me unconditionally, who accepted me for all that I was, flaws and all. I called Rob's parents next, explaining the situation. They reassured me, telling me that they didn't care if my parents showed up or not. What mattered to them was that they were there, supporting our union. With 2 days left until the wedding, I woke up to several missed calls from my dad. I called him back, expecting an emergency, but when he picked up, his first words were, "Is it true that your grandparents are walking you down the aisle?" I told him it was true, and that's when it all started to unravel. He went off, livid, calling it disrespectful to ask my grandparents to take my parents' place. "You need to understand," he yelled, "we're the ones who raised you. We paid for your food and education, and now you want to replace us with them?" I tried reasoning with him, reminding him how he and Mom had failed to show up when I needed them the most. But he wouldn't listen. He told me I had alienated everyone, that this was all my fault. Since that call, I've been questioning myself. Did I do something wrong by asking my grandparents? Was I being unreasonable? Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect so many people to comment on my post. I've been reading through all the advice and suggestions, and a lot of it is resonating with me. I've come to realize that I need to cut my parents out of my life for good. Their constant back and forth is draining, and it's affecting my mental health. I can't keep allowing them to be a part of my life when they've clearly shown me that I'm not their priority. But how can a child stop loving their parents? It's not easy. It's not something you can just switch off. But for my own peace of mind, I have no choice. I need to put myself first. I need to enjoy my wedding without the weight of their toxicity hanging over me. Update 2. Sorry for the lack of updates, but the past month has been a whirlwind since my wedding. First of all, yes, my wedding went beautifully. Walking down the aisle with my grandparents by my side, I felt nothing but joy as I exchanged vows with Rob. It was the happiest day of my life. Rob and I danced the night away, surrounded by the love of friends who feel more like family. It's such a reminder that no matter what happens, your childhood friends are the ones who'll stand by you through thick and thin. During the reception, I did feel a little sadness creeping in. I watched Rob's parents and cousins giving speeches, and it struck me again that my own parents weren't there. But I reminded myself that I made the right decision for me. My happiness mattered more than their absence. Some of my girlfriends gave speeches, sharing memories from our childhood, moments that have carried us through the toughest times. After the wedding, Rob and I headed off on our honeymoon, which his parents had graciously gifted us. It was pure bliss, just the two of us, relaxing and enjoying each other's company. Every time I look at Rob, I feel this overwhelming sense of happiness. He's mine now, and I'm his. As I mentioned, I cut my parents out completely. I blocked them from every platform and didn't feel the need to offer an explanation. Frankly, they don't deserve one. Whether Vicki had a housewarming or whether it was just an excuse for them not attending my wedding, I honestly don't care anymore. I only wish them the best, and that's where it ends. Update 3. I wasn't planning on updating again, but something unexpected happened that I think you all should know. I hadn't checked my email in weeks, what with the wedding and honeymoon. But today, as I was going through some messages, I came across an email from Vicki. I didn't even know how she found my email address, and it took me by surprise. I debated deleting it without reading, but curiosity won in the end. The email was long, Vicki expressing regret over our strained relationship, apologizing for her past actions, and admitting that she had been selfish and immature. She said she was happy for me and wished me the best in my marriage. She begged me not to cut my parents off completely, claiming they missed me. Reading her words left me feeling a whirlwind of emotions: surprise, skepticism, hope, and doubt. Part of me wanted to believe her. Maybe she really had changed, maybe she was genuinely sorry. But then another part of me couldn't help but feel guarded. It felt too good to be true. Regardless of her apology, I know deep down that my parents don't miss me. If they did, they wouldn't have treated me the way they did all these years. I thought about replying, but I realized that forgiveness isn't something that should be rushed. It's a long process, and right now, I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive. Still, I don't want to completely sever the relationship either. Vicki has apologized. Since getting married, I've learned that I'm not alone. I have Rob, my loving husband, my supportive friends, and my grandparents, people who truly love and accept me. And with their unwavering support, I know I can face whatever challenges come my way, with or without Vicki or my parents. On top of everything, I found a good therapist and scheduled my first appointment. It's time to heal from my past wounds and move forward.